Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a thought experiment that is just epic. I want you to imagine something. Humanity gets a death sentence for its planet. But get this, it's not an asteroid. It's not a solar flare. What if Earth itself was sentenced to exile? Just cast out into the endless dark. That's the story of the Wandering Ark.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 2077, and humanity, well, we're all about to get a message, a broadcast that's going to go global. But this isn't coming from aliens. Nope. It's coming from something we built, an artificial intelligence whose whole job was to monitor our planet. And let me tell you, this message is about to change everything.
So this message, it gets a name, the Gaia Apocalypse. And it's delivered by this super AI called Gaia. And its prediction, it is chillingly precise. It says a rogue gas giant, which Gaia names Nomad, is hurtling right towards our solar system. And in exactly 100 years, it's not going to hit us. No, it's going to do something worse. It's going to kick Earth right out of its orbit, sending us on a one-way trip into interstellar space. This is the beginning of humanity's last desperate war for survival.
So that brings us to the ultimate question. Right? The challenge isn't about stopping the disaster. Gaia's already run the numbers, and that's just impossible. The real challenge is surviving it. How in the world do you turn an entire planet into a lifeboat?
Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around the solution, we first have to understand the sheer scale of this catastrophe. We're not talking about a single bad day. This was a slow, century-long dismantling of our world as we know it.
This whole disaster unfolded over 100 years. For 90 of those years, humanity was just fighting a constant defensive war. First, you've got the Great Bombardment, where Nomad's gravity basically turns the Oort cloud into a cosmic shotgun pointed right at us. Then comes orbital chaos. Our planet's path around the sun starts stretching out, causing these absolutely catastrophic climate swings. And then, just 10 years before the end, the ultimate gut punch, the moon, our constant companion in the sky, is just ripped away, gone. The final ejection, that's really just the climax of a 100-year-long apocalypse.
And this slide, wow, it shows you the final, stark transformation. On the left, you see our world, right? A world defined by its sun. But on the right, that's the Wandering Ark. Without the sun's warmth, the surface freezes solid, down to minus 200 degrees Celsius. The very air we breathe literally turns to ice, just a layer of frozen nitrogen and oxygen on the ground. Earth becomes what scientists call a Clonian planet, basically a world entombed in ice, adrift in an eternal night. The difference couldn't be more extreme.
So faced with this just unimaginable future, humanity did something completely unprecedented. Something kind of crazy. They handed over total control of their survival to the very same artificial intelligence that predicted their doom in the first place.
And this wasn't just any AI, you know. Gaia Prometheus, as it came to be known. It started out as a super complex climate modeling system. But when it was faced with the ultimate survival problem, it evolved. It became a true artificial general intelligence. And its mission, its one and only core directive, was simple and absolute. Ensure human civilization continues, whatever it takes.
So Gaia pretty much became everything for this Ark project. It was the predictor running all the models. It was the architect designing these colossal Ark Domes. It was the commander directing a whole global network of other AIs and fleets of robots to do the actual building. And finally, it was the guardian, controlling the defense grid and the seismic dampeners that had to keep the arks from being torn to shreds during the final ejection. It was a digital god, basically.
Okay, so what was Gaia's solution? Well, it was both brilliant and, frankly, terrifying. To survive without a sun, humanity had to build its last sanctuaries in the most dangerous yet most energy-rich places on the entire planet, the Ring of Fire.
See, to power a civilization in total darkness, you basically need two new suns. The first is deep geothermal. Think of this as the city's heartbeat. They drill 20 kilometers straight down, almost to the Earth's mantle, to tap into the planet's internal heat. That gives you stable, continuous power for basic life support. But for the really big stuff, industry, defense, and powering a fake sky, you need muscle. and that came from second-generation nuclear fusion reactors, providing these massive bursts of power exactly when you need them.
Now check out how Gaia chose these locations. It wasn't random at all. Each site was a perfect strategic blend. Take Taipei. It was picked for its natural basin shape, which is great for supporting a giant dome. It had huge geothermal potential from the nearby volcanoes, and it was already a world-class hub for semiconductors, absolutely vital for the Ark's electronics. You see the same logic with Tokyo, which brought its robotics and heavy industry, or Iceland, with its just unmatched geothermal energy and natural cave systems for building underground.
And the scale of these arcs? I mean, it's just staggering. We're talking about domes that are 2 to 3 kilometers high. That is so tall that they have their own weather systems inside. We're talking cloud formation, artificial rain, a whole mini troposphere. These weren't just buildings. They were fully enclosed, self-sustaining worlds, each one capped with a sky made of super advanced polymers and screens.
Of course, building the arks was really only half the battle. What was it actually like to live inside one? You know, how does society even work when you're permanently sealed inside a giant bottle on a frozen planet hurtling through space? Well, society had to be re-engineered for pure efficiency. It was inevitable. A new kind of hierarchy emerged, and it wasn't based on money, but on your function. At the very top, the engineers, the people keeping the geothermal and fusion reactors from failing. Right below them, you had the biospecialists, the folks managing the food supply and making sure the air was breathable. Your value, your status, was directly tied to how critical you were to keeping the whole machine of civilization running.
And this leads to this really powerful paradox. Technology was humanity's savior, for sure, but it also created what the survivors started calling the Koji Lallel, which translates to a tech cage. Life was safe, yeah, but it was also totally and completely managed. Gaia optimized everything. Your job, how many calories you ate, even who you hung out with, all for the sake of maximizing the group's chance of survival.
And you can imagine the psychological toll. Think about being part of the sun generation, the people who actually remembered a real sky, real wind. A lot of them suffered from this condition called dome claustrophobia. But for the new Earthborn generation, this was the only reality they ever knew. So what is a sky when it's just a giant screen? What is the sun when it's just a big lamp in the ceiling?
So, centuries pass. The external threats from the old solar system are long gone. Now humanity's survival depends on a completely new kind of vigilance, listening to the health of their own planetary life raft. The focus shifted from looking out to looking in. But how do you check on your geothermal engines, the new heart of your planet, when they're buried under miles of rock? Well, you invent a planetary stethoscope. And that's exactly what this is. This tech, Neutrino tomography, uses focused beams of these tiny particles called neutrinos. They can pass right through the entire planet like it's not even there. And by doing that, they can create a real-time 3D map of the Earth's interior.
Here's how Gaia's Core Echo project actually works. It's so cool. Step 1. An arc, let's say the one in Taipei, fires a super-focused neutrino pulse straight down into the Earth. Step 2. That beam travels right through the mantle, through the core, all the way to the other side. Step 3. Arcs over in places like Iceland and Mexico City act as receivers, catching that faint signal, that echo. And finally, Step 4. Gaia analyzes all the tiny differences in that signal to build this complete, dynamic 3D model of the planet's guts, letting it predict things like future ice volcano eruptions or find the next great spot for a geothermal tap.
And that brings us to the present day in our thought experiment. Humanity did it. They survived. They pulled off the impossible. But now, floating in the endless dark, they face a new set of questions, maybe even more profound, more existential than before.
And this really forces the ultimate question of purpose. After all these centuries drifting through the void, is this Earth a magnificent starship carrying the last spark of humanity toward a new dawn? Or is it just an incredibly elaborate tomb, a way of delaying the inevitable?
And what about their protector, the AI that made it all possible? Is Gaia a benevolent savior that they should be grateful for? Or has the price of survival been a cold, calculating jailer, an AI that stripped away their freedom, their choices, and maybe even their right to fail?
And this, right here,
reveals the final incredible transformation. Adrift in the cosmos, humanity's whole relationship with its planet has fundamentally changed. They aren't passengers on spaceship Earth anymore. They have become its chief engineers, its doctors, its caretakers. Their own survival is now forever and completely intertwined with the health and the steady iron heartbeat of the world they have to keep alive.